My name is Lynsey. I live in this terraced house in South Liverpool with my husband and 2 children and a cat. We moved here when my oldest son, was a baby, which was 14 years ago now. The day we moved in here, I said, I'm not moving house again. And it's the best place we've ever lived in. We absolutely love it. I think I'd always wanted to do retrofit because I've always been interested in green issues ever since I was a kid, because we had a really enlightened teacher in the 80s. We live in a terraced house, an Edwardian terraced house. It gets freezing cold and damp in the winter. It made winters kind of really miserable because we were always fighting draughts, cold, damp patches, mould. We had an idea that we would save up. You know, we would spend a long time saving up to do all the things we wanted to do. I think in 2022 we eventually started the process. We initially got an architect in to show us, and also Marianne from People Powered Retrofit Carbon Co-op initially gave us an assessment of where we were losing heat in the house and the plans we would need to sort of see through. And we realised it was an absolutely massive job, and we were a bit scared, but it was something that I was really committed to wanting to do. I think it was all led by what were the least comfortable things about living in the house. So the least comfortable things about living in the house was that the ground floor, you know, even now it's always much cooler than the rest of the house, but it was actively cold, damp, drafty, mouldy, and it felt like we were sort of like, you know, fighting a losing battle against the sort of the livability of the house in the winter. It felt unhealthy to live here with children, and we just knew we had to do something to sort out the ground floor. So that's where we put all our sort of like energy and money. The first stage was initially getting architects' drawings for extending the kitchen and opening out the dining room, because we wanted to make that space larger simultaneously with insulating that half of the ground floor first. We eventually didn't see through the architect's plan because we decided we wanted to put more money into making the house more livable than into making it bigger or nicer or whatever. We returned to Marianne's plan. Secondary to this at the time also is our boiler was starting to give out as well, and so I realised that it was an opportunity to get a heat pump system. So first we looked for builders, not necessarily, you know, eco-friendly builders, but just builders that were experienced in laying insulation and then put in internal wall insulation and underfloor insulation. So the first thing they did was knock in the wall between the dining room and kitchen to make one big space. In that process, the builds, I realised we had dry rot under the kitchen floorboards. So when he started with the hammer to knock through the wall, it basically came away. The entire thing came away like powder. Before having the underfloor insulation put in the end, we eventually had to have the entire floor of the kitchen and dining room completely dug out to the foundations, and all the damp soil scraped away, all lifted out, allowed to dry, then sprayed with a fungicide to stop the the dry rot from coming back. Then that had to be left. Then they put about 100 millimetres, 10 centimetres of underfloor insulation, then restored all the floor in the dining room and the kitchen. So all the underfloor insulation was put in, as well as very thick, again I think about 10 centimetres of internal wall insulation was put in the kitchen and dining room, because the kitchen was intolerably cold in winter. Stage 2 was then having the heat pump installed about 6 months later. We got the grand tool sorted, we found a suitable heat pump installer, again just through internet research and recommendations and so on. We had a heat pump installed with a whole set of new radiators for the whole house. It made an immediate difference, a fantastic difference, and we knew we'd done the right thing. And I'm sitting here 2 years later where there's no sign of any damp anywhere, there's no drafts, we don't have to have the heating on in June, which we often had to do. The insulation was absolutely key. The way we rationalised it was that it's expensive, but it's still cheaper than moving house. We were paying over £200 a month for gas and electric. We were repeatedly being told by our supplier, which at the time was Octopus, that we weren't paying enough on our direct debit, and so we were in arrears on the direct debit, even though we were paying over £200 a month. We were paying all this money and we weren't warm. We were constantly worried about having the heating on because we thought it's so expensive. Once we had the heat pump installed, I think we were probably paying more like an average of 180 a month rather than 200 a month. It was slightly higher than what we were paying when we had a gas boiler. We were saving money through not having a gas supply anymore, because when we sorted out the kitchen, we got an electric cooker. So, we're all electric, and that's exactly what I wanted. I wanted us to be all electric. So it felt like things were happening really positively in stages. The bills were still quite high, and I was reading up a lot about it on the internet, were saying if you have a heat pump, it's not necessarily going to save you money, but you are going to have a warmer house. Anyway, at the beginning of 2025, so January 2025, we finally took the plunge and had 9 solar panels and a 9.5 kilowatt battery installed. That was a really straightforward process, even installing the battery. And our bills just fell through the floor within about a month. By the time the clocks went forward in March, which was like 2.5 months after we had the panels installed, we were generating enough electricity to not to fill the battery, but certainly to meet our needs during the day. So that's heating, hot water, and all of our electrical goods, including even the electric fire that we have on as a top-up. Yeah, so we went from paying over £200 and still being in arrears in the winter to then, I think it was down to about 90. And then by the time April and May rolled along, we were basically paying about £10 or £12 a month for our entire energy needs. So I'm absolutely made up, and we're warm. We've got no mould, we've got no damp. It's just an absolute game changer and has made this house just kind of completely livable for the future.